Hello everyone, Brick Horizon here, and this time we have the ZH-40 Tribune, which now has 3 appearances and is one of my favorite ships. This ship can be found in Galaxy's Edge, and more recently in the game Outlaws, as well as in the background of Skeleton Crew, which I've made a few mocks and videos of, so if you're interested in those, I'll put them at the end screen. The Katooni was actually one of the first mocks that I made, but I've made a lot of improvements since then, and redesigned it at the Midiscale. Now you can have this right next to your Millennium Falcon or other Midiscale ships. But let me know if you'd like to see a Midiscale Crucible or Twilight to go with it. Before I get any further into the video, I'd also like to mention that I finally created the instructions for this mock, and you can find them on my rebrickable page or through the link in the description. First, I'll talk about this mock specifically, and then I'll do some comparisons to my original version, which was Playscale, and I have it now, but I could probably update it to be more accurate and stable, so let me know if you're interested in a video and instructions on that one. The episode that this ship's name comes from was a very heartwarming episode, and for a quick recap, a Jedi ship, the Crucible, was captured by Hondo's pirates, and Katooni was able to build her first lightsaber. After gaining respect from Hondo, he named the ship after her, and unfortunately she didn't make it through Order 66, but the ship lives on. Looking back on this model, even before I created instructions and made a few fixes, it is very detailed and uses a lot of very interesting techniques to get the details in. I'll start at the front since that's where the cockpit is, and I'll make my way back from there. This ship has 3 main prongs, and there aren't any sources that I've found which describe what these are meant for, if they have any reason, but I think it looks really cool. It actually turns out that they are a remnant from the original version being the ZH-25, of which you can definitely see some similarities. The cockpit has multiple windows and seems to take its shape from the Millennium Falcon, but also has the nose of a hammerhead shark and 3 different cannons. One thing that I really like about Star Wars is how ships are almost always asymmetrical. Even though this one is really close to symmetry, there is still a lot of small details that are different. There seems to be an intake on either side behind the cockpit, and I wanted to make these as accurate as I could, so although it was difficult to get these right, it was definitely worth it for the detail. The neck of this ship is also very detailed, and so is the shaping. I got the idea for the structure of this section from the X-Wing LEGO sets, where there are 2 hinge plates that make the sides slope in, plus a rod through the middle that keeps the structure from moving. Greebling at this scale is also very fun, and I used a few pieces like the roller skate, some brackets, and an ingot for extra depth. It also notably curves and slopes at the top, so getting that to work was a little difficult. I created this mock around the time when using panels for panel detail became very popular, and it happened to be the best solution for this. I also managed to cover the connection with this accurately placed 2x3 in dark red. The extra arms on the sides of the ship are another interesting detail. I actually used a similar technique to my first version that I'll get into later, but for now it's constructed with hinge plates and brackets. As well, it looks like there are guns or probes on the side of them and greebling on the top, plus greebling continuing from the neck and main section in the middle. This shoulder section isn't very detailed in universe, but I still did want to make it not look flat, so I added this rail slider for depth and detail since it does have built-in greebling. Above that was a technique inspired by the set that got me back into LEGO, the Resistance Y-Wing, which uses these corner round pieces to round the corners, except it uses it to get the insides of the corners round. The top is very flat, but I did actually reuse a piece from the original model that I made, and that was the large 3x12 wedge plate in dark red. Like that one, there are so many angles that make up the detailing on this. There's a slit in the front right before the engines, and a lot of variance along the sides too. You can see a lot of the asymmetrical detailing here, like the differently colored panels and random extra pieces. Near the back is the gunner, and I tried to make that as accurate as possible at this scale, with there being 4 cannons and a raised, rounded platform with different colors around it. If we take a look at the very back, you'll see the engines and hyperdrive. The hyperdrive is kind of rounded, and it's mostly flat, but it does remind me of a rounded square. But I think it looks very nice, especially with the curved pieces that slope into this engine area. The actual engines are very interesting as well. Since this model was made with more references, I was able to make changes and get the shaping to be even more accurate, with both engines folding in, as well as getting a lot of the actual detailing in, like the parts being round and greebled, so getting all of these was really fun, especially when designing it. Then we have the docking module, which is pretty similar to the Millennium Falcons, although the parts of the engine are covered up with this curved wedge piece. I made this back when the Midiscale Millennium Falcon came out because I really wanted to remake this ship and thought it would be a good time too. The stand is also very similar to the Millennium Falcons, so it can have the tilt, however, it is different in some ways. I have a few reasons for the changes though. The stand on the Millennium Falcon has a bit that goes into the middle and connects to the structure. Mine is more similar to the newer ones, but connects the studs instead of directly with the anti-studs. Bottom uses the snot technique and upside down plates, so the stand had to be connected with anti-studs. And I did this by taking a Technic piece and putting the top of this half studs tile into the holes, that way the anti-studs are facing up to connect with the Katooni. There's actually an extra detail that I added as a reference to the model that I used as a reference. There were not a lot of angles of the Katooni at the time of making this, so I did look at Mel's miniatures for this one. Funnily enough, the hole at the bottom of the miniature is triangle, and I thought that was an actual detail, so I added this to mine before even realizing what it was. But now if you've watched this video, you'll know about the Easter egg. Now I do believe that I managed to get this stand at the center of the mass, however, if it isn't, you can easily adjust it, unlike in the case of it being connected to the structure of the ship. On the bottom, there are also these three rectangles, which are not only accurate, but they are the landing gear and can be used as such if you don't want to display it with the stand. Now, I'll briefly go over some of the differences of this original model to the Midiscale one. Also, let me know in the comments if you'd like to see me update this. Almost immediately, you can see the difference in the techniques used. The old one is very blocky, and while not bad looking, you could tell that I made the parts in sections before bringing it together, instead of trying to make it all fit together from the start. While this isn't a bad model and it is still in my room back at home, there are a lot of inaccuracies with the old one that were improved in this Midiscale version. I was able to get the intakes that I talked about earlier, which are at the front, as well as changing where the guns were. The old version that I made had more variance in the height between the layers, but things like the engines were wrongly put together. I thought that the engines were on one slab before realizing their actual shape. My old version was also a lot blockier, and as I look back at it, I keep thinking about redesigning the playscale model, and I think it would be a really fun thing to do. Anyways, one of the last major differences is in the back. I assumed that the engines were the only engines and didn't expect it to have a Millennium Falcon-esque hyperdrive in the back, so I had replaced it with a large hatch that had a pull-out interior that wasn't very detailed. Unfortunately, I don't have any renders of it, but I'll make sure to include a big interior in the new version if and once I start working on it. The ZH-40 Tribune is one of my favorite freighters in Star Wars, and I'm glad that it's recently gotten more attention, with it showing up in the background of shows like Skeleton Crew and in Star Wars Outlaws. Now that I've finally released the instructions, you can find them on Rebrickable or through the link in the description. If you enjoyed this review, then like and subscribe and let me know in the comments what you thought about this build or what you'd like to see next. Anyways, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.